This is my video about the Stranger Things finale that I got to see in theaters, and boy, do we gotta talk. I'm issuing a heavy spoiler warning right now. If you have not seen it yet, I don't want to ruin it for you, so continue at your own discretion. The Duffer Brothers have done it. The first major original historical series that has been amazing all the way through and have actually landed that plane beautifully. The writers of Game of Thrones couldn't do it, but finally we have a series that from beginning to end keeps you not only glued to the screen, but something that's intelligent, heartfelt, and incredibly unique and exciting to watch. And I am actually happy that a lot of the theories that I did videos on were not correct. Even though it was very fun to theorize and get attached to some of these things, I really wanted to go in there with an open mind and just put full trust and faith in the Duffer Brothers and everything that the actors had said about the final episode. From beginning to end, this really had me captivated. I was pleasantly surprised with all the little twists all the way through. I couldn't really predict what was going to happen next, and anything that I did remotely guess that was going to happen, I was actually very happy and relieved to see. But that's just a testament to the Duffer Brothers and how talented they are. They brought it home, and they brought it home beautifully. I'm not mad that none of our favorite characters actually died. I mean, that's a Hollywood ending, sure, but the way they did it was sincerely genuine and everything that I had hoped, that I didn't really know I wanted to see. And of course, Netflix, like any big corporation, loves money and is not just going to let these characters die, because they're going to want to bring them back in 10 or 20 years for a big reunion show. And who doesn't want to see that, right? It's the perfect series from beginning to end, in my opinion. Anyway, let's get into it a little bit deeper. I'm going to talk to you about some of my favorite moments, and the acting just impeccable on all fronts. Like, none of these kids, none of these actors are coasting on the other's talent or success. Like, literally every actor from child to adult is phenomenal in this series. The last scenes that we see the actors in were actually the very last scenes that they shot for the entire series. So their emotions were very raw and right on the surface, and they were already amazing actors in the first place. But tell me that you couldn't feel that in your soul, just seeing these tears down their face and their heart on their sleeve as they're doing this last Dungeons and Dragons scene. You could really tell that it was a farewell goodbye, the last time they're on set shooting this, the last time their character is doing this, at least for a long time. And especially when Mike is explaining to them about the mage, talking about Elle's story, all putting their books on the shelf for the last time, and the passing of the torch, Mike kind of watching his sister and the young ones start their own Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. It was a beautiful way to end it, and it definitely had me choked up. Now, the big question is, of course, they tried to do a little Inception thing at the end, leave it up to the viewer. Is she alive? Is she dead? What's really going on here? There's ample evidence that Elle is still actually alive. Now, when Mike is talking to Hopper on that bench, it is from a place of believing that she is gone, she is dead. And what's so profound about what Hopper says is that he needs to decide. He's got two paths, one where he just wallows in that misery, which Hopper has been down before, as he says, and the other where he accepts what she has done and lives his life, because that's what Elle would want him to do as well, which is beautiful. He gets to the celebration, and then we see that flashback. He hears the feedback from the speakers, and then it brings him back to that moment watching her before she disappears in the debris, and it remembers the sonic blasters, the kryptonite, and he puts it together that there's no way Elle would have been able to even make it from where she was in the truck with them to the portal again, with how these things have affected her for the rest of the series. She's down on her knees, she's covering her ears, she can't move when these things are affecting her. Physically, she wouldn't have been able to make it over there. She would have been caught. They would have caught her. And with those sonic blasters on, he realizes she wouldn't have been able to get into his mind as she has that talk with him. She wouldn't have been able to do that in that moment if she was really standing at that portal right beside the sonic blasters. You could argue, well, she's on the other side of it. A mic doesn't feed back a speaker unless the microphone is in front of the speaker, but she still is in the vicinity of it, originally in the truck with them. There's evidence of it right here. You could see her in the truck with them. And another big thing is the vibrating finger thing, which we saw in the Kali scene in Dr. K. Dr. K thinks she's seeing Kali, and then she notices that her finger is vibrating, and she goes to touch it, and the mirage disappears. She realizes it was all an illusion. The Duffer Brothers would not have shown us that and then shown it again in Elle's finger while Mike is talking the story if it wasn't meant to be that she is actually alive and that what Mike is saying is absolutely true. Stacy comes out to invite them to her party, and he says they'll pass on it because he's got a better idea, to obviously play a Dungeons and Dragons game, which is a beautiful callback to everything, because he wanted to tell them indirectly, of course, course, through the game maybe at first. And of course, we do see Elle. It's possible they could be bringing the viewers in on the story, as Mike is saying, that this is how she may have escaped, this is where she may have ended up in, and that they choose to believe it. So they leave it open-ended, they all say they believe, and it's up to the viewer to decide if we believe as well. Elle also does not have a nosebleed, which she normally does when she's using her powers. Yet another piece of evidence that she is not really there. But the evidence is just very, very strong that what he's explaining is completely true. We do see her end up in a place with 3 waterfalls, and it does mean that she still has her powers. Maybe she can still tap in and communicate with them down the line. We don't know. Now, did Hopper know this? Maybe he did. Maybe that's a part of the scene that we don't see. Maybe he did actually tell him that on the bench as well, and Mike doesn't believe it until he gets to the celebration and then puts those things together. Hopper was there when Kali was dying, and maybe Elle would have told him what her plan was. But I also don't necessarily think that that is what happened, because Hopper still may not have let her go. Or it shows that he does trust her enough, and he also, once again, has to accept for himself what her choice is going to be after that beautiful speech that Elle gave him on top of the roof of Hawkins' lab, where she explains that his last daughter didn't have a choice, but Elle has a choice, and he accepts that. And that is why I think Elle is still actually alive, especially for the reunion show in 10 to 20 years from now. Another thing you can think, if you don't believe that she's alive, you can choose to believe that after he has that talk with Hopper about choosing to live his life and coping, it's that maybe Mike is coming up with this in front of the gang, and it's his mechanism of coping to just still believe that she's alive. He does become a writer, and he does end up writing their stories based on their adventures. He ends up putting out a book called Stranger Things based on their adventures. So you could look at it that way, as just a coping mechanism, and that's how he continues his life, with acceptance that she is gone and that she made her choice. Or you could just follow all the literal evidence that I just gave you to believe that she is actually alive still. Another amazing moment, of course, that had everybody on the edge of their seats, especially in the theater, watching Steve fall off that tower and it going to black. It just created such a tension and suspense for the whole theater. And then when we see who finally saves him, a pan up from the hand that's grabbed him, and to see that it was Jonathan after everything that those two have battled with their rivalry, it was just a beautiful thing to see. Who doesn't love to see that? It's a feel-good thing, but they really didn't make it cheesy. It was great. It has integrity and it was sincere. The moments between Hopper and Eleven, Vecna making Hopper think that he's shot the tank and murdered Elle, was a beautiful little twist in there. Did it really happen? Did it not happen? Pulls her out of that tank to reveal there's no gunshot wounds at all. Just a beautifully done scene as far as the suspense goes. Again, the speech that he gives her before she goes into the tank, amazing acting. Hopper, man, I could watch Hopper forever. And then getting Mike and Elle's goodbye, heart-wrenching as well. There's not a dry eye in the theater. It was just, loved it. And then fighting the actual mind flare, I thought was awesome. The effects were amazing. I love seeing that thing come out. I did do a video about it, possibly the kids being stuck in what I thought was the 3-headed dragon that Will had painted from the season before, but they kept it with the mind flare theme in that spider form, and it was still perfect. And we also noticed that there were no monsters in the abyss, right? Which does suggest that the mind flare has absorbed everything on that planet in the abyss, which is why it's also stuck there upside down, dormant, and Vecna's feeding on it. Of course, we see that Vecna has become one, as he explains in that vision while Will is communicating with him. I love that scene as well. Part of a lot of theories that were going around that there's still humanity in Vecna, that he would speak to that little boy that's inside him and what happened to him with the mind flare in the first place. But to see them all work out a way to fight an actual giant monster like this after everything we've seen was awesome. You'd think that would be cheesy, but it wasn't. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Elle jumping in there, taking on the mind flare herself, and it's like a pure, Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader moment. We thought it was going to be an Emperor moment, but Vecna, he's just done too much. He's done too many bad things, killed too many people to redeem himself. So I'm glad they went that route instead of making it like, Anakin Skywalker overthrows the Emperor and ends up saving, Luke Skywalker. I'm happy they went with the fact that Vecna just chose to be one. And of course, that comparison to him being number one, he chose to be one with the mind flare. I love all those little similarities and those connections there. And that battle between him and Elle still was great to watch while the kids are fighting from the outside. Awesome. I also love, who doesn't love the bromance between Steve and Dustin in honor of Eddie, jabbing him from the bottom there. So good. You got Lucas still with this slingshot. I don't know what he's shooting, but still, all right, I'll accept it. It's puts the stuff on him. The other guy throws the fire. And then we got, a bloody mess for the mind flare. And one of my favorite parts about this whole sequence is of when Elle has Vecna almost against the spike and he goes to grab her face. And then that's when we finally see Will come in and control him again with those white eyes. I felt like I was watching another one of my favorite superhero movies and them executing those fight scenes so well. And it gave me goosebumps. The theater was cheering. People were clapping. And it was so awesome to be a part of that in an actual sold out theater and experiencing that vibe together. And then I think my favorite part is Joyce. There's a lot of symbolism happening when Joyce starts trying to chop off the head of Vecna. Sure, a lot of people are asking, well, don't they know each other? They didn't even say anything or address that. Might be a plot hole. Who cares at this point? What I loved about it is that she is obviously using a dull axe, because one sharp axe chop would have knocked that thing right off, especially now because he's grouped. But this scene was beautifully edited because the symbolism shows the justice with every chop for each of the main characters. They showed each of the main characters who had been severely affected by vecna throughout the whole series with each of her chops. It's like, this one's for Will, this one's for Max, this one's for Lucas, all of that. It was clearly one of those symbolic moments in the editing, in the storyline, and the acting. And I love that it took that many chops to get that guy's head off. It's so fitting as a mother for her to be the one, after everything that Vecna had put Will through, feeling so helpless all the way through. And the fact that she was the one to give the final blow was just beautifully poetic. The youngest kids, Derek, so funny. Suck my fat one, hilarious. Great scene between he and Vecna and Holly. I also loved seeing Henry push himself through biggest fears as well, and you could see it on his face. I love the send-off. The older kids on the roof of the radio station talking about college and then deciding to meet up with each other. Well, you could see the real emotion there. That would have been the last scene that they filmed ever together for this series up until now. Another one of my favorite little Easter eggs here, the Hopper and Joyce engagement scene. Now, of course, I'm so happy to see them finally get engaged. We all want to see that. They finally end up at Enzo's, perfectly poetic and fitting, and it's great to see him as the chief once again. But he does mention that he's got an opportunity in Montauk. For those of you who don't know, Montauk was the original name of this series, and I believe was also the original name of 11. But when it got to Netflix, they changed the name. And I think also Montauk is also what the real place that all of the Stranger Things stories are based on. There was an actual lab experimenting on psychic children, and it's just one of the many classified, unclassified stories that exist in our real world. And I thought that was a real Easter egg as to what this next spin-off might be. The Duffers has been very open that they're doing another live-action spin-off with none of these characters. But Hopper mentioning Montauk makes me think that maybe him going there, maybe there'll be something more. Could be a spin-off of his. Or it's going to be something like the X-Files, where each episode or each series is based on something different, something else weird happening. Will it be connected to the Mind Flayer still? I kind of hope not, because that story's kind of dead now. There's other weird shit that could be going on in the universe, and definitely weirder stuff that governments actually do to base these things off of. And I think that would make it more realistic. And who's not going to? We're all going to watch that. I'm happy that it's not to do with any of the actual main casts right now, because we did get a nice closing to them, and they can always appear in these spin-off shows, which also makes it cooler. But we do need a fresh story, and Netflix is going to want to keep Stranger Things going on, especially for the next 20 years, if not more. Why not? Think about how many other franchises have done the same thing. I'd watch. I believe. Now, there's a lot to unpack here. I'll probably do another video about more Easter eggs and things that we may have missed. I have to watch it a few more times, but this is my initial reaction video. I just got home from the theater from watching it, and I loved it more than I thought I would, especially after Volume 2 being a little bit underwhelming, as many of us felt. It's still very Hollywood. Everyone has a happy ending, and that's usually boring, especially these days, but I was pleasantly surprised, and it felt fully satisfied for me. I do know that the Duffers even entertained a completely alternate ending where Henry Creel did turn on the Mind Flayer, but they realized it would take 2 minutes, another 6 hours of storytelling needing to be told. It wasn't necessary. It was actually more interesting that he did it, because it wasn't as predictable. It's all been done before, and this was something that's still unique and original to itself in its entirety, a classic to me. We revere these classics, Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, E.T., Back to the Future. All of these things are historical because they're so unique to themselves, and no other movie or series can really replicate it as good as they were. And this series incorporated all of that stuff in a way that no one else has, and just made it fresh and exciting, and in a decade like the 80s, to bring it back in a way that is nostalgic. I'm nostalgic for this series that has never existed before. Can you believe that's part of the magic of what the Duffer Brothers have created with Stranger Things? Anyway, let me know in the comments what I missed. What was your favorite part? I would love to nerd out about this with you in the comments. As always, thanks for nerding out with me. If you love this type of content, please hit that subscribe button for me. It really helps me out here at the channel. And as always, thanks for nerding out with me. I love it, and I will see you in the comments.
Yeah.